Oh, hi, and welcome to the Autism Education Network. And today we're going to be talking about German Shepherd puppies. Hey guys, look at the newest member of our family here. His name is Hero. He is a German Shepherd. He's blue, actually, and he's 10 weeks old. And he's actually going to be one of our therapy dogs and be working with our kids. And he's just an amazing little animal. As you can see, he's just cute as all get out, and he's going to be here. So if you're ever by our office, come by and say hi to Hero. So I could talk about German Shepherds all day long, but I think I better talk about the IonCleanse foot bath. So he's going to say goodbye, and I'm going to put him down. You may hear him, but otherwise he's doing great, and he's just a big love. He's even talking right now. I'm going to put him down and let him go and take a little nap because he's just a little guy. We're going to be talking about the foot baths, and I have to tell you, I was really resistant to the whole idea of foot baths for the longest time. Initially, when I first read about them and was being discussed with by the peoples who were trying to sell them to me, that you can tell, this is back decade and a half ago, what's coming out of the child or the adult by the color of the water. And they were saying, if it's brown, if it's reddish, if it's bluish, and it's like, what, we don't store heavy metals in our feet, okay? Come on. And the hardest part to get anything through would be the sole of your foot. Let me test the water. Let me do a sample of the water before and after you do the foot soak and see if that color really does mean mercury coming out, and they wouldn't let me do that and kind of stopped talking to them. So for years I've been just kind of, I knew they were out there. I saw them at the different conferences that I went to, and I didn't even go to talk to these guys. So eventually the folks from A Major Difference who make the IonCleanse foot bath approached me, and I'm going, oh gosh, how do I get out of this? It's like, but I'm going to be nice and talk to them and kind of nod and kind of just like look interested. And Glenn there said to me, he said, why don't you try it on some of your hardest patients? We'll pay for that. We'll take care of it. It won't cost the patients anything. And I said, well, if I do this, I'm going to do it on some of my most difficult kids. And if it doesn't work, it's going to be, out there on the internet that this doesn't work. And he said, go ahead and do it. So we selected a bunch of kids, and some dropped out for one reason or another, but we eventually got down to about 13 kids who were doing it. Now, these are patients of mine. These aren't internet people. These are patients who have been working with me for quite a while and kind of hit the wall. They're doing good, but they're still struggling in many different ways. And I said, okay, let's do the foot soaks. So first of all, I was thinking, how are you even going to get one of these kids with special needs to even sit there for 20 or 30 minutes with their feet in warm water that's having a small electrical charge being passed between electrodes to generate, the separation of water into hydrogen and oxygen and H2O2 and stuff like that. I think they're not going to, well, they do. They actually liked it. They actually liked it. Well, how are we going to measure if they improve or not improve just by mom saying so? I mean, that's not going to work for me. And there is a tool that we can use. It's available on the internet. It's free of charge, called the ATEC scoring. And it's available for free at Autism Research Institute, ARI. And you just go to it and you just fill it out, and it kind of gives you a number based on the answers that you give. So we decided that in this study protocol, we would get a baseline ATEC score, which basically just tells you if something's working and they're improving. They're less, if you will, I hate to use the word, but they're less autistic. Whatever symptoms we're following, they're better, okay? So the higher the number, if you'll let me use the word, worser they are, and the lower the number, they're better. So we're looking for lower numbers. So we did one at baseline 0. We did it after 30 days and after 60 days. It was going to be a 60-day trial. They're going to do 3 days where they soak, 1 day off, 3 days where they soak, 1 day off. And depending on their age, we do 20, 30, or 40 minutes of soak time, okay? And they did these ATEC scores, and parents were reporting back to me, oh, the child's doing better, or he's getting a little irritable and cranky. What do we do? And we talk about some binding agents and all. 30 days goes by, they're due for their second ATEC score, and those are sent off. They're coming back, and I keep reading them, and the kids are improving. Now, remind you, these are moms. Probably like many of you, you're not going to be wowed by anything unless there's really something there. They're not wishful. These guys have been doing this for a long time. And they're not going to just say, oh yeah, he's speaking more, he's more social, he's more, because I'm doing this. It's for real. There's not going to be a placebo effect on moms. And certainly our kids don't know what a placebo effect is, so they're not going to give you a placebo effect. Anyway, 30 days goes by, and we're compiling these scores, and it's like looking really good. And I'm like scratching my head. Really? It's really working. 60 days goes by, and bottom line, guys, there is about, in the patient population that I'm taking care of, not your easy guys, these are the tough nuts, a 30% reduction in autistic behaviors according to the ATEC scoring, which is according to the parents, which is pretty darn good. And I did this study, and we compiled it, and it's available right now if you want to download it. It's in our little chat area here. And we'll also have a link to it on my website. So what's going on here? Why is this? Well, it's all theoretical at this point. The theory is this, the theory is that. First of all, whatever the water changes, it's just being oxidized. Whatever's in there, whatever minerals in there, it's being oxidized. So if people tell you the different colors mean different things, that's a bunch of hooey. Don't go for that. Because if you don't even put your feet in there and you turn it on, the water will change into kind of a muddy brown look to it. So the coloring of the water is not meaningful. That's one thing that you guys have to remember. The behavior changes in your child, now that's what I'm after. I'm a clinical physician. I want to see clinical changes, and the way to record it, like I said, is the ATEC score. So that was improving. So the whole idea behind what we're learning still, and we've got decades to learn, is this whole idea of ionization therapy. If we are we opening up detoxification channels that were somehow stuck closed? And that's why these kids were, instead of releasing and removing toxins, actually storing them. And these toxins impact how we respond to our environment. It can be poisons. Many people talk about glyphosates. That's the stuff that's in Roundup. How do you get that out of the body? Well, the folks at a Major Difference AMD actually did a study showing that you can remove glyphosates from the body with this foot bath. There are other things, many toxins, actually too many, that, well, why don't we just let the body do what God programmed it to do, is remove poisons. We are exposed to things every day. If we're able to help the body detoxify by something as innocuous as putting your foot in a foot bath that's got a little bit of a current running through it, that's very, very safe, why not? Now, the interesting thing about this company, and one of the reasons I decided to go with them, is because of the fact that they give you a full refund if after 60 days you don't see improvement. So you do your ATEC scores, and after 60 days, if you don't see improvements, just send the unit back to them and they'll refund you your money. Now, who else does that? Whether it be stem cell therapy or hyperbaric oxygen therapy or whatever therapies, this is a freebie if it doesn't work for your child, because nothing works for everybody. But I asked them, I said, so out of every 100 units you send out, how many do you get back? 5 is what they tell me. They have no reason to lie to me. Very, very nice folks too, by the way. 5. So 95% of the people who buy the equipment, who use the equipment for a 60-day trial, end up buying it because it's actually been very beneficial. And you have to think about it. It comes with a big price tag. You could look it up online. But what would you spend to have a 30% reduction in your child's behavior in 60 days? That's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm not a spokesman for them. I'm just interested, as you know, bringing forth to you things that I have found in my clinic to be helpful for the kids that I see, especially if I'm concerned that there's a toxic event going on, and how do I clear it? How do I help the body clear it? And that's when I start thinking about this particular product. So with that said, there are some questions that I have based on the IonCleanse. Do you recommend other brands beside IonCleanse or just this one? Well, I haven't really studied all the other brands, and I know there's problems with, this brand. They're all approved. All the electronics are approved for this use and all. But the main thing about this brand is they give your money back if it doesn't work. And so they really stand behind the product. Yes, you can probably buy a cheaper unit and it may or may not work because it doesn't have the same electronics integrated into it. But they're not going to give you your money back if it doesn't work. It's just another $1,500 that you threw down the trash can. So I think for me, that's the safest way. I would rather pay a little bit more for a product knowing that if it doesn't work for my son or doesn't work enough to make me think it's worth it. In other words, if you were to spend $2,000 for a product, you better get $2,000 worth of improvement, maybe $1,800 worth of improvement. But how about 30 cents worth of improvement? No, you want your money back. I think that's what really has this particular company, really up there in my opinion. Any validity when naysayers believe it's just electrical nodes, not sure if I'm using the correct term, causing the water to discolor? Yeah, I'm not interested in the watercolor. Like I mentioned, you're absolutely right. It's a bunch of hooey. I know the water is going to discolor because it's going to get oxidized by the electricity passing through there. If anything, you know that what they say is happening because you can look at the water. If it wasn't doing anything, the water would still stay clear. The contents in the water are not that. We're going to get rid of these things either through our perspiration, through our poop, or through our pee. We're going to mobilize it out. It's not coming out of the bottom of our feet. Okay, our feet just don't have gates. I mean, heavy metals, they're heavy, but that doesn't mean that when we're standing, they're drawn to the bottom of the foot, and then all we have to do is open up the trap door and out it comes in the water. That's not going to happen. All right, so Kristen writes, our IonCleanse foot bath came in today. Oh, hey, I want you to write back next week and let us know what you're thinking. But make sure you get those ATEX stores, okay? Again, ARI, go to ARI.org and or at least Google it and go to their website, do ATEC, ATEC, and get that down. How many minutes would you recommend starting a 3-year-old? 20 minutes. I think 20 minutes is perfect. What signs and symptoms should we look for if we're having a negative reaction, and should we stop it? First of all, if there's any negative reaction, call the good people over there, and they have a wonderful customer service team that will be able to tell you, oh, we've seen this before, what's probably happening, and we'd recommend, and off you go. I mean, if you don't have a physician who can help you with the binding agents and stuff like that, but I wouldn't just get rid of it. The negative side effects that these kids have, they're just more irritable, cranky, they're not eating as well, they're not sleeping as well. I mean, there's only so many things that these kids can do anyway to tell us that they're not doing well with something. And I think that is all the questions I have on this. So let me see what people are writing me over here. Reading examples of behaviors. So Ashley writes, any reason why a child would get worse on any of these treatments? I'm thinking she's talking about IonCleanse, right, Ash? Autoimmune, whatever. You know, the question is, in my mind, that's a great question. So to kind of paraphrase what you're writing, she's got a child with autoimmunity, and would detoxifying poisons from that child's body potentially cause more autoimmunity or worse? And my question is always, why did the children get autoimmunity in the first place? Was it from something that they've been exposed to environmentally, injected into them, in their foods, in the air? I mean, what's available around them that is actually entering their body? Now, the rest of us can detoxify it and get rid of it, you know. I read a while ago that we're all exposed to about 13 micrograms of mercury every day through the air we breathe, the food we eat, or whatever. But if we're able to get 13 micrograms of mercury out of our body every day, there's no net change of mercury in our body. We are detoxifying it. Glutathione detoxifies it. Our methylation pathway that makes glutathione, it's one of our major, detoxification pathways. There's lots of detoxification pathways, and we're just learning about them. And people talk about detoxification through the liver in phase 1, phase 2. There is so much about detoxification that we don't know. And there's some that we've nailed, okay? If the autoimmunity and the inability to clear substances from our body is allowing things to continue to grow, like pandas or Lyme's disease, and it's from aluminum toxicity, then it would behoove us to get aluminum out, and I think we'd only get better. So I don't think I'm going to see with ionic foot baths, conditions get worse because we are applying a little bit of current into water, and we're either absorbing the electrons in one form or another. Again, this is all theoretical and probably a little more complicated to go through without being able to draw on the board and show you what's going on. And I don't even think half of you would even care. Just, does it work or doesn't work? Do I get this for my kid or not get this for my kid? That's what a lot of us are thinking about. So I think that it wouldn't make autoimmune issues worse, but we would be very careful with any new intervention or protocol with our kids who are medically fragile. All right. So Angie writes, hey, Angie, how many days a week would you recommend? What we're working with, it seems to be pretty good, but I can change it. 3 days on, 1 day off. 3 days on, 1 day off. Some kids do better 2 on, 2 off. Some kids do better 1 day on and 3 days off. It's kind of variable depending on the age and the particular issues that are going on. But I do like starting everybody 3 days on, 1 day off. Good one. All right. Let's see. Any other questions before we move on to other topics? I think that is it. Okay, so lots of questions. So, I wanted to make sure that we get caught up on questions. Let me see. My wife says I don't check this often enough to make sure that I don't get all the questions. Somebody keeps writing. Nope, I think I've answered it all. Alrighty, so I was wondering, Kendall writes, I was wondering what you would suggest for starting supplements. My son has been gluten-free and dairy-free for about a year now. He'll be 3 in April, 3-year-olds in supplements. That could be tough, right? Especially if they're picky. First of all, whatever supplements we're going to start, we start one at a time, wait 2 or 3 days before we start another. Because anytime we add a new supplement, we run the risk of having a negative reaction to it. I've had kids go nuts with vitamin C, fish oils, 5-HTP. I've had kids even develop fevers when you give them Motrin. You give them Motrin, the kid's got 101 temperature, you give them Motrin, it goes to 104. Or I'll say to a child who's breaking out in hives, let's give them Benadryl. The Benadryl makes the hives worse. Who does that? Our kids do, okay? So they can whack out on vitamins, minerals, oils. So you always start one at a time, okay? You don't start a bunch. That's number one. Number two, it depends on the child. If I have a child who is eating everything, eats vegetables, fruits, variety of meats, and the gluten-free grains and all, then I'm going to be a little less worried about that child nutritionally than the child who only eats 3 or 4 things. My son only ate bacon, Fruit Loops, French fries, chocolate chip cookies, and a gallon of milk every day. Well, he's not getting any vitamin C there, except for maybe what they put in the Fruit Loops, but I don't think that counts too much, right? But we're not getting vitamin C, and this kid's now going to be at risk of getting the disease scurvy. Okay, we've talked about that in the past with nutrition. So some of the kids come to me and they're nutritionally depleted. There's nothing, they're running on fumes. And carbohydrates. These kids come to me also who are carbohydrate junkies. They love the salty, crunchy, and that's about it. Anything soft, anything wet, they're not going to touch, okay? In fact, if you make them touch it, they start to gag, and you try getting that into their mouth and stuff like that. So with that said, I do like to use a lot of the capsules for my 3-year-olds. And if you just think of the capsule as a dose already figured out for you, because you're going to open up that capsule and pour it into something, okay? Whether it be 5-HTP or the vitamins and minerals. I like using vitamins and minerals together first with my kids who are nutritionally depleted, okay? Vitamins and minerals first. And see if I can't do that. We have obviously a vitamin and mineral line here that's very easily absorbed, and what's in there is clinically irrelevant. It doesn't have just like a touch of vitamin C or a little bit of vitamin D so they can put it on the label. It's got what our kids need. And I'll put that into, if they're drinking juice, I'll put that into some juice. I like them to drink it with a straw if they can, and I always like to have the parents put crushed ice in there. And you never, ever let the kids see what you do, okay? So I try to sneak it in that way. We use the capsules. We also have a powder that actually has its own little flavor, but I have kids who, they only drink water, so you gotta be very careful with any flavoring because they won't touch it. She says, as a 3-year-old, what would be the suggesting supplements? My 3-year-olds that I see in my clinic, I will put on vitamin D3, 1,000 IUs a day, absolutely everybody. Because I test all these kids, I don't find any of them with adequate levels of vitamin D when I test them. None of them, okay? And we live down here in sunny Florida. Mind you, I see patients from all over the world, but it's very, very rare. Like I said, I can't even remember one where it's like, wow, your vitamin D is really good. I never see that. It just doesn't happen. We all need vitamin D. As adults need vitamin D, kids need vitamin D. Omega oils, I like to use the Mending Naturally omega oils. We have those here. Like a teaspoon's got like a ton of omega oils in it, and I'll mix that into their smoothie or into their drink, or they'll take it out of a syringe. My son would take cod liver oil, and this was back, 20 years ago, the stinky old, probably half rancid stuff that really smelled like the fish market. He'd take anything out of a syringe, so I would give him a syringe of the stinky old cod liver oil, and of course, he'd get on his lips and everything, and then I'd tell him, go kiss your mom. She wasn't appreciative of that. Anyway, no sense of humor, right, Donna? No, she was all fine. And but he would suck that down. I could give him a half a bottle of that. So I have them on omega oils, I have them on vitamin D, I have them on a multivitamin. And then I get very target specific about what we're trying to do with anxiety, obsessive compulsive, ritualistic behavior. And we've covered that topic in other video blogs that we've done together. All right. Along the same line, Kendall also asks, do you test your patients for heavy metals? I do. It's not the first set of tests I do, right? But I do get to it. Why? Because there's only so much blood that you can suck out of these kids, and that's a big blood draw. So I will eventually get to that. Vitamin deficiencies, I don't necessarily have to test because of the fact that I can get a dietary history and hear what they're eating and get an idea pretty darn quickly. They're kind of expensive. We can do a few through LabCorp, but the whole panel is an expensive test that insurance usually doesn't cover. So just to cover everybody, let's just put them on a multivitamin that's high quality, that's made with high quality ingredients, and I think that's the best way to go. Alrighty. Ooh, this is a good one. This is a tough one. Arlette asks, how can I help my child eat more meat and vegetables? He's a picky eater and he eats the same every single day, mostly rice and beans and salty, crunchy snacks. Well, I'm going to assume that our weight is okay, that we're getting enough calories to maintain growth. It's very important that we get enough calories to maintain growth. And you can with rice and beans and salty, crunchy. You kind of put in a key there, salt. I use a lot of salt. I like to use Himalayan pink salt. And if I'm going to introduce something like, say, roasted broccoli or roasted cauliflower, remember I'm saying roasted, they like the crunchy, roasted better than the steamed, soft, mushy stuff. So roasted green beans, if you almost overcook them and they have been brushed with olive oil, and they've been lightly salted with Himalayan pink salt, If you can get the child to pick it up and touch it to their tongue, the first thing they experience is the salt. These kids love salt, and that's your hook to hopefully get that in there. So I like salty, crunchy vegetables. Not maybe the healthiest, but it's a way to get them to transition away from their gluten-free pretzels, okay? I will also put them on 5-hydroxytryptophan, 5-HTP. I want to raise serotonin levels to make sure that they're not so darn obsessive compulsives. You know, it's like a natural way of doing that. So I do like to use 5-HTP to help that. I have some other kids, unlike hopefully Arletty's child, who are very emaciated. They're very thin. They got the thin arms, the thin legs, and they have kind of a bloated belly. Those are kids I'm going to want to be very careful with. And I will probably think about even some medications to help establish a diet, to establish a hunger so they'll want to eat. You know, these kids also fill up on a lot of sugar, whether it be juices or fruits, and sugar will diminish the appetite. And so therefore I try to remove anything that's sweet before they go out, okay, to eat. It's very important to do that. Let's see how we're doing on time. So reducing the amount of sugar they eat, adding the amount of salt to their foods may greatly help with that. I don't like to feed the kids with this evil device, you know, where they're watching a video or TV. I don't like to have them graze. Bottom line, though, is to remember that these are stimuli that these children are responding to in an abnormal fashion. I mean, if the child's hungry, you may not have one of its favorite foods, but there obviously is something else out there that the child should be eating. We all didn't like things. I didn't like tomatoes when I was a little guy growing up, but I would eat cucumbers. I'd eat radishes. So you have to keep in mind that these kids are reacting to stimuli in an abnormal fashion, and they'd rather starve to death, some of them, than to eat any of that fresh fruit, or fresh vegetable, or meat. So you have to be very careful not to starve them. So sometimes what we have to do is ask, do they even feel hunger? Are they responding to hunger in a normal fashion or abnormal fashion? And I think that we probably ought to not starve them, okay? But I'll ask the parents, how many days have you gone without feeding him? And obviously, if you have a child who's very heavy, we can go 3 or 4 days. If you have a child who's very thin, we might be able to go 1 day. I need to know, will hunger kick in and be a good spice to get them to eat new foods, or they don't react to hunger? The next thing is, like I mentioned earlier, some of these kids, if they even touch the banana or the applesauce, they'll start to gag because of the fact that they find that stimuli so obnoxious. Then we have to think about some medications. So that's a good question. Let's answer one more from Diana. Diana asks, my 7-year-old is gluten-free, dairy-free, has multivitamins, probiotics, leucovorin, which is folinic acid for language, omega oils, B12, but we still have lots of vocal stimming and hand stimming, hitting self, teeth grinding, toe walking. What can we add next? Whew, I'm glad that's our last question because that's a long answer. So these behaviors that you're seeing, the stimming and all, I'm wondering where we are with our fecal loading. How much stool do we have in the colon? And very often these kids have way too much stool. And parents will say, well, he poops out this much every day, but his body makes that much, then that much is going to accumulate day after day, week after week. And they have this protuberant belly, they look pregnant. That's going to cause teeth grinding, stimming, hyperactivity, irritability. I mean, you all know what it feels like when you've been in a car, for example, and you have to have a bowel movement and you can't. It's very uncomfortable and it makes you very irritable, short-tempered, and it's not a great feeling. So I would want to know about that. The next thing is bacteria and yeast. Bacteria, yeast, and even parasites can be responsible for feelings of unease where they're grinding their teeth, they're toe walking, they're hitting themselves. So that's a kid who I'd want to get a stool culture on and see just what's cooking inside of his body. I don't think it's just a matter of adding another supplement to calm that. I think there's something in the GI tube. I'd probably say in my practice about 85% of the behaviors that you are talking about right here are bowel related, not neurotransmitter imbalances in the brain, but below the neck. So when I think of our kids and I'm seeing a set of behaviors, I'm wondering how much of those behaviors are coming from above the neck, somewhere in the head, and imbalanced neurotransmitters, and we have to work with that, or below the neck, and we've got problems with bacteria, yeast, parasites, constipation, diarrhea, malabsorption, wrong foods. You don't have the wrong foods. You're doing a good job. So that's where I think we ought to go. So one more, because of the fact that it's been on my list for a while, from Gina, and I haven't answered it. She's talking about diatomaceous earth. She says, I've been adding a 1/16 of a teaspoon of diatomaceous earth to my son's juice 2 to 3 times a week. He's gone from pooping 4 times a month to daily. It's been about 8 months, and his behavior, eye contact, oh, look at that, behavior and eye contact, as we got him pooping better. Kind of dovetails into my last question. Two-way communication, our sanity is also improved. So our question is, small amounts of food-grade diatomaceous earth, okay to give to severely constipated children? 2 thumbs up on that one. I really like diatomaceous earth, and it can really, really help. I don't see a downside to it. It's chemically inert, but it does have a way of modulating immune effects on parasites and things. It's kind of cool. It's kind of complicated, but I would definitely say, from my point of view, that would be a great thing to continue for about forever. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I want you guys to have a great week and love your kids a whole heap. And I'll see you next week, Lord willing, at 4 o'clock. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.